Hello. Hopefully I'm not too loud. Don't mind me. We will be starting the first story with Waking the Saints by Tempest, who is one of the anthology authors. Woo! All right. Chapter 1. Blood and Ash. When did they get so young? Zorik set aside the rest list on his desk. The girl didn't look old enough to qualify for a mage. Ordeal, but her accuser had sworn she passed her dancing day into womanhood. Dark hair curtained her face as the guard led her to a stool in the book-lined office. He looked down for her interrogation records, a curl of his hair falling forward with a silver streak in it still surprised him. She's late for her dose of Demon's Bane, Director Zorik, said the guard. Master Heki nudged the girl onto the stool. She hissed as the movement rubbed the red cordage holding her wrists behind her back. Zorik hissed. Make sure Master Petras stays on his schedule. I know he's overworked with too many prisoners, but we can't risk any mages getting their powers back. Heki shuffled his feet. No, sir. Should I fetch a pot of Demon's Bane? Zorik crinkled his nose. He had hated even the smell of the mage-blocking tea, let alone the bitterness he was unfortunate enough to taste. While training, most of his officers tasted mild, swampy rot. But what joy! Zorik got the full bitter onslaught. I suppose you should. Zorik read a note from her accuser about her far-seeing for a gang of burglars. She's not much of a risk of fire magic, so leave her here. I'll start while you find the kitchens. Heki relaxed, wrinkling his red uniform. Thank you, sir. I'll see if Mistress Rowan has your favorite sassafras tea. Heki, you spoil me. If she has any taboo book cakes, bring some, too. I won't count how many disappear into your satchel. A guilty grin split his face before the heavy stone door closed behind him with a thud. A shuddering breath reminded him of his prisoner. The room is lined with lead paint, as written by St. Tebephin's vessel. When Zorik had inherited the room from the previous director of the Escala Academy, he had removed the austerate portraits of the saint and their vessels in favor of his more homey collection of books. The bleak walls tended to cause claustrophobia, especially in those mages who relied on their access to the ether. I'm sorry if the room makes you uncomfortable. Her thin, desperate laugh was quickly absorbed by the walls. Her stringy hair fell back, revealing a bruised face. Oh, Master Petras has made sure I'm comfortable, the thief said. He didn't like my answer when he asked me who taught me. Zorik twitched a document closer, reading the interrogation's terse recording of her blasphemous responses. You shouldn't have said that about his mother. Zorik brought the parchment to his eyes. Mistress Tarja. The girl giggled with a ragged breath. Do you know why you're here, Tarja? Asked Zorik. Because that demon-eaten bastard turned me in, Tarja said. Your accuser, Master Kai, says you were using farseeing to look into rooms to see if the owners were gone before your associates would rob the place, Zorik said. Kai wanted a piece of the hall and my ass, she said. Only I wouldn't give him nothing. He also said he had contacts, someone who taught you how to focus your abilities, so you didn't need to be carried out after a job. Kai liked it when I had to depend on him, until I kicked him for groping me. She grinned with dark teeth. He's lying about the magic. I just had good hearing. Zorik pursed his lips. I don't care about the theft. That's the city guard's problem. I care about the magic attacking demons. If the voice from the Saint's Haven was correct, they didn't have much time. He needed to find a powerful mage, not to destroy him, but to give him all the power of the Saint's vessel. His stomach clenched at the thought of handing the Saint over to heretical madman. I want your teacher, the head of the network. The silence stretched. The child knew. She must know. Why did she hide these monsters who would call down demons? Why did she play such dangerous games with her soul? The last girl to walk through his door for an ordeal had promised to hunt him as a hungry ghost. She had survived her ordeal, bringing bewildering commands from a saint. You don't have to risk an ordeal. Give me the names. What are they to you now? I can get you on the parole list. With the new king's order to halt the ordeals, the temple's prisons are overflowing with accused mages. You would, of course, be expected to return to your trial when the prelate returns from his pilgrimage. The girl met his eyes. They both knew she'd disappear after release, but that wasn't the point. No more fleas, cold floor, dozen stinking roommates, and disgusting tea? Zorik nodded. Other than the tea, sounds like home, she replied before a cough rocked her belly. She was so young, and yet this officer thought she was highly connected, much stronger than the petty theft she appeared to be. Could she be strong enough? He picked up the velvet bag on his desk, the facet of the ruby distorting the fabric, its intense glow visible. The prelate had ordered him to lock up the Saint's Haven, but a saint's command was higher. A whisper of voice uncoiled from the pouch. There is another option, Zorik said. Red gloves protected his hands as he slid the ruby ring onto his palm. Brilliant light flashed from the depths of the gem, turning the room to day. Harkev's piss. What's that? In the red glow, her face paled. No, you can't lead me for an ordeal. You can't without witness. That new king said no. He saw what you did to his teen wife and told you priests to stop. Zorik rotated the ring, sending dancing patterns across the rounded walls. The king can't overrule the prelate in temple matters. The ordeals are halted as a courtesy. Although dimmer than before, the light patterns entranced him. This is the saint's haven I used for her ordeal. Gentle Mistress Hallam, at the time, and not much older than you. You stopped an ordeal for that. The ordeal ends when the saint signals clean. Usually that means the haven goes dark, but Saint Potteru said she was clean. A saint, a real saint, not just stories. Accept the saint, and you can walk out of here, revealing the revered and worshipped as a vessel. I know my scripture, priest. That means demon flood, the end of the world. The demons are already coming, because of idiots like you. You can't stop them all. We need an army of saints. Without Parketh, we can't wake the saints. Zorik said, his voice rising with dismay. Do it yourself. His eyes dimmed. The saints demand a mage, powerful and ambitious. I had hoped that would be your network's leader, someone called the Raven. Find and destroy the mage network. That had been his life's work. How could he look at Heki in the eye, knowing he betrayed that cause? Unlike a mage that drew fire from the ether, Zorik shunned power, but he needed that mage. He set the gem on his desk. My sources tell me you reported the target's caravan while still days away from Escala. You're stronger than you look, Tarja shrugged. I don't know how this haven works, Zorik said. I'll give you parole if you'll touch it. Tarja pointedly looked over her shoulder at her bound hands. Zorik bit his lips, then drew a knife from his desk drawer. He saw the thin red spike vines until her hands dropped free. She snatched at his knife, but grunted when Zorik stepped back easily. Give me the name, and you can walk out of here, said Zorik. Even just your contact. I'm no Stitch, she said, circling around the room. I could put healer mage Mother Tepeki from interrogation. She worked for Escaline Laya, but we know she did healing for the urchins. Magic, not herbs. If you won't help, I'll make her touch it. You could save her. Tarja growled. A name, or the haven. What will it be? Zorik said, holding the haven in front of him, but blocking the door. Pushed against the bookcase, Tarja tore down books off the shelf. Books on demon hunting, magic, and the history of saints rained down on the plush rug. No, don't touch her. Don't make her come back hollow like... She stopped, her eyes darting like a corner rat. If I do it, she goes free. She gets my parole. The powerful healer had been next on his list. Yes, of course, Mother Tepeki would be released, all charges dropped. Swear? Tarja demanded. He set the haven on the desk, peeling the red glove from his left hand toward... Zorik pricked his finger for the blood oath. I swear Mother Tepeki will be released. Blood and ash, my soul consumed by fire if I lie. Dragging her feet, Tarja approached the desk. Don't tell her it was me. She'd hate that. Tarja grabbed the ruby ring as the slight girl crumpled. She smacked her head against the desk, her arms stiff, Her fingers locked around the blazing gem, but the rest of her body dropped. Zork hurried to lift her head, smearing her blood against his exposed left hand. A shock flowed into him, and he jerked his hand away. He lowered her head onto his lap with his properly gloved hand. Sleeping saints, what was happening? Her eyes flew open, the whites hidden by a shifting darkness. Saint Paru, are you there? Asked Zorik. Her head twitched and lolled to the side. I claim this daughter for Parketh. Tarja's lips moved and slurred the words. Light in the gem fluttered and dimmed. Her eyes slid shut. No, this wasn't how it worked before. Light had filled the ordeal room, and the mage girl had glowed before she refused the saint. And the saint had almost killed her when he withdrew his presence. I can't get enough control to ask, Potteru's voice sounded. I can't. If I take enough to support myself. Tarja grasped and arched her back. There's not enough power to sustain us both, Potteru said. Why did you bring me such a weak mage? She knows someone powerful, strong and cunning, but hiding. Tarja convulsed again. I won't hurt him, Potteru said. I want to give him Parketh's gift. I need to know. Show me where he is. Why are you thinking of the palace? Not the king, but someone close by. Her heart pounded under Zorik's grip around her ribs. Show me, Paru cried, with a cascade of sparkles. Oh, no. I'm sorry. No, don't retreat. No, I'm not ready. Don't break the connection. Tarja's choking grasp sounded like grotesque laughter. Priest, find me that mage. Paru's voice grew distant. Oh, please. No, I'm sorry. The door to the haven is closing. I don't have time to leave the lock open. I don't have time to restore the blood vessels. Please help her. A final twist and Tarja dropped, unbreathing, into his arm. The haven's light went dark. The door rattled, followed by Heki's with a tea tray. Sleeping saints preserve us. How did she get loose? Heki shoved the tray onto Zorik's death. Quickly kneeling, the guard checked for a heartbeat at her throat. The girl's body laid heavily against Zorik. You killed her, Heki said softly. It's time for comment time. So feel free to leave a comment. This person wanted general emotional impact, world building, that sort of thing. So feel free to leave and follow. There's more to the story on Storyforge as well. And feel free to write any comments. hope that was enough time to leave comments. We will be continuing on with the Quills Swindler. Yay! The Quills Swindler is Quills Swindler and the book Shadow of the City. It's all within, the whole story's within the first section of it, so if you just keep scrolling down, you'd be able to read the rest of it. I'm just going to read chapter 1 for today, so if you want to continue, please follow the link to read more. Sorry if it was a bit scrolled too fast. Anyways, chapter 1. A Body in the Smoke. The neon sign above the blue magnolia hummed in the damp air, its flickering glow staining the rain-slick pavement in streaks of electric blue. The club sat tucked between a pawn shop and a liquor store, the kind of place where shadows lingered long after the music stopped. Detective Zeno took a slow drag from his cigarette, exhaling into the humid night. A thin fog rolled in from the Mississippi River, curling around the tires of the black and white squad cars parked along the curb. He pulled his trench coat tighter against the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "Bad one, Z," came a voice behind him. Zeno turned to see Sergeant Hank Mallory, his partner in vice and virtue, trudging towards him. Mallory's tie was loosened. His thick mustache twitched as he chewed an unlit cigar. "Inside," he said, jerking a thumb towards the club entrance. The moment Zeno stepped in, the scent of stale bourbon and cigarette smoke hit him like a punch to the gut. The house band's instructor laid instruments. Oh my goodness. The house band's instruments laid abandoned on the stage, a muted trumpet gleaming under the dim lights. As at the far end of the room, near the booth meant for VIPs, a body slumped over the table. Vince's Moreau, state senator, dead. Zeno's eyes swept the scene. A single gunshot wound to the head, close range, no sign of struggle. The drink in front of Moreau was still half full, ice cubes melting into a glass of bourbon. Someone had walked right up to him, pulled the trigger, and disappeared into the night. "Witnesses?" Zeno asked. Mallory shook his head. Few people heard the shot, but with the music playing, nobody reacted right away. By the time the bartender saw the body, whoever did it was long gone. Zeno crouched beside the corpse, taking in the details. Moreau's suit was immaculate, except for the blood splatter that now marred its crisp white suit. His wristwatch, a Rolex, still ticked. Robbery wasn't the motive. He glanced at the drink again, reached into his coat, and pulled out a pen and gave the rim of the glass a gentle nudge. Lipstick. Not Moreau's shade. Zeno stood up and turned to the bartender, a wiry man with thinning hair who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Who was he here with?" Zeno asked. The bartender hesitated. "A lady," he admitted. "A real looker. Black dress, red hair. They were talking low, real serious. Then she got up, walked out. A few minutes later, bang." Zeno exchanged a glance with Mallory. Anyone know her? The bartender shook his head. Never seen her before. Zeno ran a hand through his slick-back hair. A mysterious woman, a powerful politician dead in a smoky jazz club, and a murder scene too clean for comfort. He had a bad feeling about this one. That means it's time for comment. It's going to be time for comments. If I can speak English today. This author just wanted some pointers on the writing. Welcome to our second story. Welcome to our second story of today. I mean, third. I can't count. Math is hard. Anyways, today is all right. For our next to last story, this is For the Summer to End by Constance. They're one of our anthology authors. So, here's your reminder to go check out the anthology and to get it and read it. There's a lot of good writers. This is another one of them. Content warning for this is death and dying. Sorry, I had to be quiet for a bit. Anyways, main content warnings of this is violence, death, and dying. So, if you're all prepared for that, we'll begin. Chapter 0 of this very short story. The last summer storm brought another foot of water to the normally calm stream. The water gushed past. Branches from toppling trees and stolen items from the distant campsites being tossed about in its wake. Sitting on the side of the slope drop-off, a young mother looked down at the once shallow passage. It was usually just more than a trickle, the tiniest of creek, just deep enough for a child to wet their feet, not too deep for a mother to worry. Perched atop the damp grass, she ran her finger through the growing weeds. Delicate golden flowers parted beneath her fingers. She dug her grip into the grass, letting the softness of the foliage embrace her fingers. Dirt wedged its way under her once polished nails. She tightened her grasp, yanking those innocent flowers from the soil they had made roots in. Holding the flowers to her face, she narrowed her gaze at the vibrant petals. Weeds. That's what they really were, not flowers, despite the golden rays that made up those thousands of petals and promises of wishes that were soon to bloom. They were weeds. Their petals were worthless. Their wishes were curses. With an animalistic growl, the young mother drew her arm back. Through the flowers, picturing them hurtling down into the rapids and being smothered within those waves. She wanted to watch them get lost in the water, to topple about and struggle to surface. She wanted to watch them drown. It was only fair. It was only right. Watching the dandelions so elegantly dance through the wind, She found herself making that wish. The petals touched the surface of the water. They floated, being bobbed about as the newfound river carried them further downstream. A frog croaked across the way. In the rustling of the trees, she could briefly see a family of deer picking their way carefully through the debris. A fawn across into the clearing. It raised its gaze, locking onto the woman kneeling across the river. It froze, lungs refusing to release as the young deer took on the newfound threat. A single paw was raised and pressed slowly into the ground. It bucked itself up, attempting to appear larger and more intimidating than it could ever be. The fawn squared up against her, both trembling in fear and daring for a fight. A snap of a branch behind her caused the deer to frighten. It dashed away, a much larger duo moving behind on its heels. She watched the family rush back into the woods. Away from her, away from the river, away from danger. This isn't healthy, Alice. She rolled her eyes at the voice. He spoke softly, with a loving and concerned tone that only drew her ire deeper from her chest. He walked slowly, placing a heavy hand on her jacket-clad shoulder. She shoved him off, refusing to break her gaze from the floating water. Another tree branch passed her, as did a candy wrapper and a bright blue water bottle. Summer often brought campers to the woodland beyond their homes. The onslaught of thunderstorms and the following flooding had not tempered people's summer desire. Oh, how she used to love the campsite just beyond the tree lines, the smell of s'mores through the night, the laughter of young children, the friends that only existed in the summer, but made those months all the better. Summer had been her heaven for so long. This summer had been the furthest thing from heaven. Her knees sunk deeper into the wet grass. The dirt had slowly begun to turn to mud. A sprinkle of rain had begun to fall. She hadn't noticed until this moment. I think it's time for you come inside. He once more reached for her shoulder. She once more shoved him off. No. No? His tone shifted, a hint of irritation crossing into it. For God's sake, Alex. You can't keep sitting out here. It won't bring him back. She whirled about, locking her gaze tightly onto him. Fuck you. I know that. You think I don't? But I just... The step back he took in alarm caused her anger to smooth in her throat. He looked unkempt, his hair stuck in wild directions, a stain on the t-shirt he'd been wearing almost all week, mismatched shoes on his feet, matching trails cutting down his cheeks from his red-rimmed eyes. Grief had hidden him hard. It had been hitting her as well. She wanted to argue that it was hitting her harder, but she knew that was not be true. It was a petty thought, a vindictive idea that festered in her anger. He had lost their son just as she had. He was grieving just as much as she was. She hoped grieving hurt him. Her throat constricted, turning away from him. Alice brought her gaze back to the river. The water continued to rush past, dragging its stone collection downstream. Birds were chirping happily from the tree branches high above their heads. In the distance she could hear the sound of a campsite, turning its music up. The smell of barbecue touched the air. It was peaceful out here. That was one positive she tried to convince herself of. At least it had been a peaceful place to pass, even if it hadn't been a peaceful way to go. Alice dug her fingers into the grass once more. She pulled up all the weeds. Her hand went to the stuffed bear beside her, fingers tight against the coarse fur. Its blank eyes were directed down the slope towards the fast-moving waters and the collection of rocks. She focused her gaze just the same. It feels wrong whenever I leave, like I'm leaving him here. I can't leave him. Not again. Sitting beside her, her husband allowed his feet to rest on the slope. The rushing waters were a few inches from his mismatched shoes. He placed his hand out, not touching hers, but just the hairs away to offer an opening of comfort. She didn't take it, choosing instead to dig her hand harder into the mud. It was still raining. I had been doing so a lot this summer. The newly formed river was a show of just how it had rained. He did not speak for a moment. His gaze followed the floating corpse of a drowned squirrel that passed them. The way the little body was battered down the riverside was disturbing. A current caught it, sending it towards a close embankment, the same embankment they had found Freddie face down in. Thankfully, the current took the squirrel further down the stream, so the young couple didn't need to stare at another corpse caught in the rocks. Alice. His voice was soft, but he continued to speak the wrong words. You know he isn't here. Her teeth ground tight against each other. She wanted to rage at him. That of course she knew. Of course she knew that their toddler's son wasn't in these woods. He wasn't at the water's edge. He wasn't in their home, waiting for his mother to come and kiss the wounds on his head. He wasn't there. He wasn't here. But if he wasn't here, then he was elsewhere. He was buried deep under the ground. He was locked in a wooden box, resting in an eternal sleep until the earth took him once more. He was away from her, with water poison in his lungs and cries trapped in his throat. If he wasn't here, then she couldn't be with him. The sun never seemed to stop climbing into the sky. She used to love that face in summer, that the sun would peek its face out so early and fight for so long to remain aligned in the sky. The long summer days had always been her safety. Freddie had loved the summer for the same reason. He had hated the darkness. The little night light that brightened his bedroom had been a bright yellow sun with a smile crafted across the plastic surface. The first stretch of the sun's ray against the turning sky would drag him from his sleep, and he would tumble out of bed ready to greet the day before it was ready to greet him. If the sky was awake, he would laugh as they tried to sleep in. Then he would have to be awake as well. She now hated the bright summer sun. It remained in the sky, never wanting to fall and let summer pass with it. In the same thought, she was thankful for that constantly lingering sunlight. Friday loved the sun. The rain continued to fall in a lazy pattern. The droplets bounced across the water's surface. Despite the rain, the sky was still bright with the summer sun. The distant sound of campers was not quelled by the slight weather change. Her jacket grew damp as the rain fell on her. The water soaked into her tangled hair, leaving the deflated curls clinging to the base of her neck. She could no longer tell what was tear tracks from her dark-rimmed eyes and what was dribbles of rain down her face. There's a buyer on the house. Her husband's voice continued beside her. She only paid it half of her mind. It's below market value, but the realtor thinks it's the best we can do in this economy. We'll be able to cover the funeral costs, have a down payment on the apartment, have some money to float us for another few months. Your work called. They want to know when you'll be coming back. I told them you'd call them back later this week. She stopped listening to him. The campsite was coming more to life deep in the trees. They were playing party music, songs she knew would mean people dancing and enjoying themselves. She could hear children laughing. Their innocent shouts of joy caused her heart to tighten within her ribs. Summer was for the youthful. Deep in the tree line, she could see movement. The fawn had returned, peeking its fur-coated head around the tree. It darted back. A moment later, the young creature poked its head out once more. Alice watched it, not spotting the older deers. As the little deer crept closer to her, crept closer to the water, she wondered how they could have let their young out of their eyesight. Glancing once more at the man sitting beside her, she wondered that question for her own lost young one. All it had taken was one moment of him taking his eyes off. He reached out to take her hand. Please talk to me, Alice. She allowed him to tighten his grip around her fingers before she drew her hand away. She wrapped them around the stuffed bear beside her. Mud now stained the tanned fabric of the toy. The fawn continued to wander towards them as silence grew heavy. She kept her gaze on the young deer as it approached the water's edge. It bowed its head to take a drink, eyes still raised to remain on them. From behind the trees, maybe 10 yards away, the antlers of a male deer could be seen as the beast watched over protectively. I want a divorce. Her words were spoken softly, but they held the same power as the rushing summer river below them. Nothing was said between them as the woodlands continued about its season. The fawn, now satisfied, trotted back to the elder. It nuzzled itself against the much larger beast of the male deer before it was led back to the woods where another waited. The ever-burning sun sat high in the sky as the distant campsite continued to grow in volume. The sound of more campers arrived brought more life to the lots. She could picture the families now setting up their tents, burning their marshmallows, grabbing their canoes, and heading out to paddle through the usually high river. If she went into the water below her, she wondered if the newfound current would drag her into the embankment one of those families had made camp on. or if it would drown her in the same place it had drowned Freddie. She let the thought pass with a begrudging acceptance. Her grip tightened on Freddie's stuffed bear. This summer was meant to be their best, but now all she wanted was for this summer to end. Her husband looked like he wanted to say something further. Whatever it was got caught in the base of his throat. Instead, he withdrew his hand and made to stand, foot sliding against the muddy embankment as he did. For a moment, his weight shifted towards the newly formed river. He righted himself, staring down at the flowing water and the collection of rocks that had broken their family. A dark thought crossed Alice's mind, that she almost wished he slipped on that wet grass and fallen into the unusually high waters the same way he had let Freddie. Maybe then, once one more body became engulfed in the current, this endless summer would end. It's time for comments once the stream catches up to catches. Yay! This author would like specific feedback on the emotional impact that was throughout this story. This is a standalone book and is complete. Hello. We are back to our last story of today. Our last story of today is one of our staff of Recruitment by bicyclebell. I will not be able to read it all, probably. Chapter 1 is quite long of this, so I'll find a good stopping place. And we'll hopefully have time for comments and all that sort of thing. Chapter 1. I said goodbye to my best friend on the morning of the draft. She rolled her eyes, grabbed my wrist like a leash, and tossed, "Not yet," over her shoulder. Her insistence paced up the steps of Islo Memorial Arena left no room for further conversation. So I saved the "I'll miss you" for later. A crowd had already formed inside, even with the massive space of the stadium. The benefit of being local meant Soris and I didn't have to arrive quite so early. Not when we could easily stroll in 20 minutes before doors closed and still had time to run home for something. Most of the people here had to travel and thus had been anticipating this moment for longer. A keyed up, frantic energy filled the arena. We handed our conscription notice to the volunteers at the door before Soris dragged me along the nearest path down, not sparing a single glance to the strangers from our home province. I waited until we'd at least stepped foot onto the field before speaking again. "Are your parents?" I told them I was going ahead, Soris said, which roughly translated to, "I ran away the moment they took their eyes off of me." A tactic she perfected long ago. "You didn't want to spend more time with them? Who knows when you'll get to see them next?" She let go of my wrist to loop her arm through mine, slowly drawing to a leisurely amble. "You're acting as if I'm already drafted. I mean, you may as well be." She shot me an unamused look. "Realistically, you're starting to sound like my mom. Drop it." I pressed my lips together tightly. Normally, I wouldn't dare utter another sound if someone told me to shut up. But this was Soris, and she always made me feel braver than I really was. It'll be confirmed in an hour anyway. She pinched the swell of my forearm in a playful retribution. The field was full of faces I didn't recognize, young adults from across the province who turned 18 in the past year. Some were excitedly speaking to one another, their words lost in the din about their energy palpable. Most of them were tall. All of them showed some form of athletic physique. These were the ones who were hopeful, who had a higher chance of being drafted, who would get to show off their years of discipline for the entire country to see. Then there were the ones who milled around almost aimlessly, the ones who knew they weren't even considered, who probably felt like this was a waste of their morning. If I wasn't here to support Soris, I would have felt the same. Someone called out for her, and I peered around to see a couple of her teammates from her high school lacrosse team. She immediately changed direction to go greet them, and though I shuffled my feet a little, I ultimately followed her. It was easy to slink behind her when she let go of my arm to hug her friends, where I stayed while she caught up with them, even when she made a point to introduce me to these girls as if she hadn't already done that a few weeks ago at the party she dragged me to, and a month before at one of her games, and another few months before that at a different game. The way they waved at me as well have been our first encounter. I knew in an hour or so they'd forget me all over again. While Ceres chattered, I snuck a glance at the temporary stage set up on one end of the field. All the potential picks made a point to give it a wide berth, if not because it was an unspoken rule to stay out of camera view until the draft began, then because of the gaggle of soldiers seated on the side. Even in plain clothes and lounging on cheap plastic chairs, they exuded authority. Athletic builds perched prettily on shabby chairs, haughty chins high and gazes sharp. The fourth that were newly recruited last year were placed right next to the stage, and despite this being their first time they'd stepped foot back in Islo since joining the King's Army, they paid no attention to any of the potential picks, people they went to school with not too long ago. I jumped when Sororities nudged me, whirling around to face her trio of friends. They giggled, the punchline held out of my reach. What? Sororities shot her friends a look. Nothing. Laura just noticed you were spaced out. Spaced out? Right. Blonde Laura scoffed. She was totally eye-fucking the soldier up there. An unpleasant warmth bled into my cheeks. I wasn't. Sororities crossed her arms, as if you weren't thirsting over Aiden Calder last night. I had to mute the group chat over the first 10 notifications. Notifs. Laura sputtered, the other two jumping in to tease her. Sororities took the charge to grab my arm again, stating that she saw some other people she wanted to greet as she led me away from the trio. Who did you see? I asked once we had stopped, looking around for who she wanted to meet. It was an excuse, May. Oh. I instantly felt bad. We didn't have to go. It's fine. I was staring. She wasn't wrong about that. She stopped my rambling with a hand on my shoulder. There's a reason why I don't hang out with them outside of games and practices. Oh. Yeah. Oh. She maneuvered me to face the stage again, resting her chin where her hand was a few seconds ago. So who were you looking at? No one in particular. She hummed an unconvincing note, brazenly pointing to a man as tall as he was wide, dark shades over his eyes even though the retractable roof was fully closed today. He's hot. Sororities? What? Everyone knows they do a bunch of procedures for the sole purpose of being eye candy. I'm just doing my civic duty by admiring. She squinted, unabashedly staring at this man we knew next to nothing about. Bit heavy on the steroids, though. You think he took steroids? He has to have. Door isn't a natural occurring body shape. Door? Don't tell me you don't see it. I couldn't, but the idea of this man filling out a door frame was funny enough to get me to laugh. The grinding sound of all the stadium's heavy doors closing drew every conversation around us to a halt. The people in the stadiums quickly found seats as the national anthem blared its opening notes from the speaker. Sororities moved to stand beside me, leaving an arm's width moving us as instructed in the conscription notice. Our peers lined up around us, staring straight ahead at the soldiers who were now also on their feet, eyes glazing right past our heads. As the anthem sounded its last note, a projector was wheeled out to the front of the stage, and our premier finally made his appearance to polite applause. The microphone screeched when he welcomed us. Someone's impatient, he joked to a rumble of obligatory laughter. Don't worry, I won't take too long. Just wanted to thank you all for coming and to remind all of our hopefuls this year that even if you aren't drafted, you can still make your country proud. Another round of polite applause as he gestured for the recruits from last year to join him on the stage. The four of them stepped up, some last-minute conversations being shared before they quieted down at the microphone. The lady, long, glossy hair framing her sharp features, was ushered to the middle and handed an envelope. Her teeth flashed under the lights. We shall now read the names of the lucky picks for this year's recruitment. And that is where I'm going to leave us. Oh no, the suspense! If you wish to continue, it will be in the description below. This author asks for specifically our overall impressions, how they were doing in their pacing, clarity, and impressions on characters for what we will be commenting on. Thank you all so much for joining us for this stream. I'm sorry if my mic was a bit quiet at the beginning. Still figuring out that sort of thing. Thank you so much for joining us. This is as many stories as we'll be reading today. We'll be having some more streams down the line. And if you want to join later, just check the Discord, the circles, everywhere, anywhere that we might post. Find out information. So, thank you all for coming. I hope this was a great stream. I hope you fell in love with some of the stories and that you end up reading more of them and leaving more comments. Until next time. Peace.